Welcome back to Good Morning Sri Lanka. Now we are in discussion with Anoja Vijayasekara, and she was a woman aid worker who was working in Afghanistan, Kabul, Afghanistan, in the height of the Taliban regime there. That was from 1997 to 2001. It's all recorded and documented in her book, Facing the Taliban, and she's here with us today to share her experience. I was just saying during the break that it's very surreal to meet someone, a Sri Lankan, who has gone through this experience, and especially as a woman who is there in a regime where men dominate the entire scene and they call all the shots, that you were there as the head of the UNICEF office in Kabul. I mean, that's an experience, that's something that you've experienced that
very
not many
inspiring,
people have.
I would say.
Very inspiring. And also some of the excerpts that you've mentioned in your book, the stories that you've related, there are some intense ones where you think, wow, how can someone face a situation like this? And then there are also some very light-hearted stories that Anoja has mentioned in her book as well. So I'm going to ask her to just relate another little snippet from her book and share a little story. This is something that Jason and I found very interesting as well.
We did hear this before the commercial break, but we're very excited to hear it again, of course.
So Anoja, all up to you.
Thank you. One morning when I entered, there was an unusual air of mirth and laughter. After greeting me, Salem said that a very funny incident had taken place the previous afternoon in the Jalalabad Bazaar. A woman had been shopping on her own without the Maharam. The Maharam edict was another Taliban law which prevented any woman from walking alone without being accompanied by a Maharam. A Maharam was her husband, brother or father. The vice and virtue had descended on this woman and said, "How dare you walk alone without your Maharam? Where is your Maharam?" Immediately the woman pointed to a man in a shop and said, "That is my Maharam." The vice and virtue left the woman, ran into the shop and started beating the man. They shouted to him, "How dare you let your wife wander off?" The man, in between his battering, yelled, "What wife? What wife? I have no wife. I am not married." The vice and virtue realized they were tricked and looked outside to catch the woman. The woman, hidden in her burqa, had disappeared amidst the throng of other women who looked identical, as they all wore the light blue burqa and were covered from head to toe. I was reminded of Harry Belafonte's famous song, "Man smart, woman smarter."
That's a lovely story. I mean, with the humor as well, you see the underlying sort of social principles that are governing Afghanistan at the moment, isn't it? I mean, a woman not being allowed to walk out without a male accompanying her, the Maharam, as you mentioned. I mean, these are the norm. This is the norm of living in Afghanistan, isn't it?
At that time. Of course, I would say that in rural Afghanistan, those norms still exist.
Okay.
But at that time, those sort of very conservative practices were institutionalized by the Taliban.
I see, okay. And another thing that we really need to draw attention to, and I'm sure that most of our viewers saw it as well, is the cover of your book. That's a very, very striking cover, and if you can just hold that up to the camera and we can give everyone a look at the cover of the book. Now, Jason, it's with you.
Yeah, it is.
Now let's speak about this cover. How did you come up with this? Where is this cover from?
So actually this cover is a charcoal drawing by my niece Savinia Besingha. Because I couldn't show an actual face. We couldn't use an actual face.
Of course.
So we had to do a drawing. And I also wanted to depict a paradox, that is the ruthlessness of the Taliban as well as the handsome features of Afghans. So I think Savini has accomplished that task extremely well.
Extremely well, yes. We looked at this and we were just like sucked into what this book was, and we really wanted to know. Now, when I read the first chapter of the book, you kind of highlighted a realistic grasp of what was going on there, like you mentioned, at the time. What would you say was your real objective with this book, with Right Document, having this book out for Sri Lankans, for the world to read it? What do you think your objective was?
Actually, the main objective is to show that wars don't solve problems. They may temporarily solve problems,
Right.
but I think unless the underlying issues are addressed, wars are not, simple solutions to problems. And I also wanted to show what wars do to people.
Right.
In Afghanistan, the proxy war that was fought between the United States and the USSR
Right.
resulted in the deaths of 2 million Afghans. 2 million lost their limbs, 800,000 women became widows,
Right.
and hundreds of little children lost their limbs due to landmines.
Right.
And the whole economy was destroyed, and people suffered so much. And I think this is something I would like to mention, that anybody who is a world leader should have visited Afghanistan at that time to see the consequences of war.
Right.
It's very easy, I guess, for people in power who are very far away to make decisions,
Right.
but then you look at the actual impact that
Yeah.
those decisions have on people's lives.
Speaking of which, you mentioned that when the Soviets were in Afghanistan, you mentioned that America declared war, but didn't declare war, but they would hire armed forces around the surrounding area to kind of fight the war for them. Quick fun fact, Osama bin Laden was in the Taliban, and what was who was the Taliban funded by? The U.S.
So
I just learned it. She just told me this, and I
Yeah,
kind of put the
yeah.
two and two together. So that's very interesting how
Yeah.
everything is just
exactly.
linked
and
together.
Yes.
when you go back and you look at how the problem started,
Yeah.
you see that it could have been prevented very easily as well. But now this book, you've launched it here in Sri Lanka, and you're going to take it to the world as well. So let's
Yes,
speak
actually
about
I
the launch.
have had some launches. I launched it in Colombo and then in New York, London, and then also in Singapore.
Right. How well has it been received
So
in
it's
Sri Lanka?
been received very well, I must say, in all the places,
Right.
because I'm getting emails from all over the world, and people are, giving me a very positive feedback.
Right. When I read this book, the first thing what I said to her was, "This should be a movie." This
Yes.
reminds me a lot of like Zero Dark 30. It has that vibe to it. Like you could just
Have
after
you been
reading the first
approached
chapter- Yeah.
by producers or directors who want to turn your book into a film and really tell your story?
Definitely.
No, I have not been approached, but few people are just,
So if you could
discussing.
pick an actress to play you, who would you pick?
I don't know.
Amaya happens to be acting.
Oh, really? An aid worker in Kabul. But when you speak about the future plans that you have now, you have retired now from the UNICEF, and the last station you were in was Bhutan. And again, that is another country where it's not very accessible to everyone. So your job really has taken you to places that many people will never get the opportunity to see, actually. So in that sense, what do you really appreciate about the work that you've done with the UNICEF?
Oh, I think working for UNICEF has been the most wonderful thing, I would say. And I was extremely privileged to be able to work for UNICEF. And so
And the next step in your plans is also to join the diplomatic service. Let's speak about that.
yes, actually that's not a job that I applied for. I've been asked to go as Sri Lanka's ambassador to Indonesia.
Oh, splendid.
So I think it's an opportunity for me to serve Sri Lanka, because
Definitely.
my whole career has been with the United Nations. Of course, I worked in Sri Lanka also with UNICEF, but I think this is a slightly different type of job,
Right.
where I can hopefully improve trading between Sri Lanka and Indonesia, and also promote more cultural ties.
Right.
I see, and that's always great news for the country. Jesse?
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that for the people watching, now we've just mentioned just a fraction of your career working with the UNICEF. Not only have you been working in Afghanistan, but also in Sri Lanka during Sri Lanka's civil war during that time.
Yes.
Tell us about that, how you first got into the UNICEF.
So I got into UNICEF, in a very sort of informal way. I did some consultancies for UNICEF because we lived, my family and I, we lived in the UK for a long time, and actually I did my postgraduate work there, and also I did some work there. And when the children were small, we came to Sri Lanka for a while because we thought they should have some
to know where they're from.
Yeah. So that's when we came back to Sri Lanka, and so I got into UNICEF because I did some consultancies, and then of course there was this vacancy in the emergency section, and then subsequently I was appointed as the head of the emergency unit, where I dealt with the north and east when the war was going on.
Right.
So I have traveled to Jaffna when it was under the control of the LTT.
Right.
Oh.
And that was quite an experience, actually.
So you really have been there and done that, haven't you? I mean, when it comes to so many challenges that you've had to face, and you just seem to just take it all very cool. I've just been in Afghanistan when the Taliban was the government. I've been to the LTT
Great tea time talk. Oh, by the way, I've been to Afghanistan.
But that, no, I think the bravery that you have is just maybe masked by the very relaxed attitude that you have, but there's a core of steel in there. And it's been such a lovely, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you this morning and sharing your story and your experiences with our viewers as well. I'm sure that they gleaned a lot from it as well. And if you want to learn more about the experiences that a woman aid worker in the height of the Taliban regime has to go through, then you have to read, it's a must read, I think, Facing the Taliban by Anoja Vijaysekara, because it's a really great read. Jason and I are hooked reading just a few pages.
Like I'm trying to slowly take the book away and like slip it into my jacket. But no, if you do want to get this book, it's available in our local bookstores here in Sri Lanka. If you want to find out more information about today's show, you can email us at mtvsports@maharaja.lk. Anoja, once again, it's been I can't tell you how grateful we are to have you on the show. It is. We are truly blessed today. This is a great way for us to start our morning on Good Morning Sri Lanka. Again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this.
Yes. Great to hear then. All right, so with that, we are going to end today's episode of Good Morning Sri Lanka, but we'll be back next morning as well with another great episode. Till then, take care and have a great day.